Question number 9, Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Revenue. Does she agree with the IMF that removing negative gearing tax breaks for property investors would help redirect saving incentives to other, potentially more productive investments?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, no. The member has got it wrong. The IMF does not describe the rules as a tax break. The rules applying to property are in line with the rules applying to other forms of investment.
Entry, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
What benefit is there to New Zealand from giving property speculators tax advantages when negative gearing, when negative gearing is primarily used by offshore speculators, with 35% of them not paying any tax at all?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Well, Mr Speaker, this government doesn't intend to tax people on income they don't earn.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Why should we allow speculation in our housing market to lock out first home buyers, given that sales to property speculators with 5 or more houses in Auckland now make up more than 1 in 7 of all sales?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, for a start, just because someone owns more than one house, it does not make them a speculator, as that member should just ask some of his own colleagues in the Labour Party about that.
Few more over there. 1 or 2 more over there.
Supplementary.
Supplementary order. We'll just have the supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Why should we subsidise speculation on property for the wealthiest people, given that 40% of the tax avoided through negative gearing goes to the top 10% of income earners?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Well, Mr Speaker, obviously we don't. We just don't expect people to pay tax on income they haven't earned.
They don't pay tax when they earn the income either.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Supplementary. Why won't National crack down on property speculators when they are driving up house prices and denying young Kiwi families a chance of ever owning their own home?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't know where that member's been, but in the last 7 years this government has introduced a number of changes which have tightened the tax rules on property. In 2010 we removed the depreciation on buildings. Since then, the amount of positive rental income received by landlords has increased by 53% and net losses have fallen by 14%. We have increased the taxation on short-term speculative property investment through the Bright Line rule, and this taxes gains from property bought and sold within 2 years and imposes a withholding tax of 33% on property sales for non-residents. In a number of budgets, and I note that that member's never voted for one of them, we have taken steps to make sure that the Inland Revenue has extra funding to make sure it can enforce the tax rules in the property sector.
Point of order, Phil Twyford.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table data provided by CoreLogic that shows that property owners, that 1 in 7 property transactions in Auckland are going to property investors with more than 5 properties.
Order. Is that information publicly available?
I don't believe it is.
Well, the member's expected to know because that question will be put.
It's not publicly available,
It's not
to the best
available.
of my knowledge.
On that basis, I will put the leave assault to table that information done by CoreLogic. Is there any objection to it being tabled? There is objection. Question number 10, Joanne Hayes.
Thank you, Mr.